Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our political and sociological podcast. I'm Dylan, and today I'm here with Treymac and Franny. Today, we're tackling a big question from our course. How do classes become political agents? Basically, how do groups of people with similar economic positions, like workers, go from just existing to actually organizing and influencing politics? To answer that, we're going to walk through some key thinkers like Karl Marx, Antonio Gramsci, Adam Pravorsky, and Thomas Piketty. So, Trey, do you want to start us off with Marx?
Yeah, so Marx is really the foundation for this question. According to Karl Marx in the Communist Manifesto, society under capitalism is divided into two main classes. The bourgeoisie, who own businesses and capital, and the proletariat, who work for wages. These two groups have opposing interests. Workers want better wages and conditions, while capitalists want to maximize profit. But Marx makes it clear that just being in a class doesn't automatically make you political. He talks about the difference between a class in itself and a class for itself. A class in itself is just people in the same situation, but a class for itself is when those become aware of their shared struggles and start acting together, like forming unions or protesting. So for Marx, classes become political agents through awareness and collective action. But this idea gets more complicated with Adam Pravorsky. He argues that history didn't really play out the way Marx expected. Instead of workers overthrowing capitalism, a lot of them became part of democratic systems. For example, workers often join political parties or unions that focus on reform, like improving wages or working conditions, rather than revolution. So instead of capitalism collapsing, it adapted. This shows that class formation isn't automatic. It depends on political systems, opportunities, and historical text. So becoming a political agent is more of a gradual and uneven process.
Yeah, and this is where Antonio Gramsci adds another layer. He then goes and starts to try to explain why workers don't always rise up to the occasion, and even when they are being exploited. One of his main ideas is hegemony. This means that the ruling class doesn't just control the economy alone. They also shape culture, beliefs, and what people see as to be normal. So people might not even realize that they're being exploited like this, because the system is something that just to them is something it really just feels natural. And Gramsci also talks about the organic intellectuals, people who come from within a class and help organize it politically. And these are the people who spread awareness, challenge dominant ideas, and also help to turn a class into a political force. So for Gramsci, classes become political agents through leadership, culture, and ideology, not just economics alone. And if we bring this into the present, Thomas Piketty shows that class politics today look really different in his research. He talks about the shift to what's called the Brahmin left and the merchant right. Basically, the left is now supported more by highly educated people, while the right is supported more by economic elites. That means working class and voters aren't unified anymore. They're split across different political sides. Because of that, it is hard for the working class to act as one political agent. So even though class still matters, it's more fragmented and less cohesive than before. We can also see this in the Battle of Chile, where working class movements become politically more active but also face internal divisions and outside pressure. It shows how difficult it is to actually maintain unity and political power in the society. Going back to what I was talking about from Antonio Gramsci with hegemony and how he was explaining that workers don't always rise up to their occasion even when they're being exploited. All this really is meaning is that the ruling class is not only in control of the economy, but they're shaping like everything else around that in the society. And this is what people are seeing to be normal. And a lot of times in life, people will have something like this happening and they don't realize that things are the way that they are because of the system they were brought up into, or the way that the system was shaped. They think that things are the way that they are just because of the different people around it, which is true, but it's not made up from just the people as much as you think. It's really like having a turtle in a tank. The turtle is only going to grow to be as big as the tank will let him.
Okay, yeah, and Franny, I really like that idea that you were talking about, how a ruling class is like dominating and the classes are kind of just staying in that because that's what they see as fit. And that kind of ties into what we were talking about in class about Foucault's study of like doxa, and how he talks about the acceptance and the kind of just the acceptance of people understanding what is happening in the world is what it is. They're not trying to go against that at all. And it also kind of ties into Marx because it talks about how there's a class above one that's running everything. And Trey, you were talking about the proletarian and bourgeoisie, and that's really something that I feel like just ties into each other, and it's kind of cool to see how these guys are all years apart in actually doing their research and work, but it's all kind of tying into this same idea of a dominating group that is running things. And to see how this ties into politics, it's like a more modern, because politics are not something that's been around for forever. So just looking at how it has been displayed, this dominating group displayed in the way they are voting and the way they're continuing to dominate over things like decisions that people can make and where they can live and what they can do, how they can vote, is really interesting. And yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that, Trey?
Yes, I agree. Going back to what Marx said about the communist manufacturer society under capitalism, like he said, it's divided into two classes, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Yeah, like Marx said, class in itself and class for itself. Like he said, a class in itself is people that are similar in the same situations. You know, maybe many people that just relate in some aspects of life. And then just class for itself is just people who share struggles and just, share things that a lot of other people don't share. And so those people become aware of those struggles and start acting together, and they form unity in a community, to become political agents, through awareness and action with each other. A lot of these classes, like class in itself and class for itself, these people, they try to join political parties or unions that focus on improving wages or working conditions rather than starting a revolution. So instead of capitalism collapsing, it kind of adapted to the way different parties act. So in many cases, capitalism had to adapt, and becoming a political agent was more of a gradual and uneven process for something that's not guaranteed.
Now, going back to everything that we were talking about with Piketty on Brahim left and merchant right, we're just talking about how it was educated people versus economic elites. And we believe with this to be that the economic elites were still going to be overpowering the educated people, just because the way that the system of things are is that just money really runs the world. Let's be real. And when you have money, you have power naturally, and people are going to listen to you if you have money versus if you do have knowledge and don't have money, because unless they see proof that you do have knowledge, a lot of people are just going to hear money and run straight towards that. And like, let's just be real, money is what attracts in this life, in this world. And so your class definitely does matter, but as time has gone on and things have started to mold and shape into different ways in society, you're seeing now that the playing field is starting to get evened out a little bit more than it was before. And now it's a lot more like less skewed than it was before, with the economics being in front rather than the education. Education is still not in front of economics, but the gap is closer than it was before. So they've definitely been able to take it.
Yeah, so that's really it. You can see that it's a very complex and diverse topic. It also shows how complex this process is. So to answer our main question, how do classes become political agents? Mark tells us that capitalism creates the conditions and shared interest. Przorsky shows that the outcome depends on history and political systems. Gramaski explains how culture and ideology can either block or support mobilization. And lastly, Piketty shows that today, class politics and are more divided than ever. So overall, classes don't really just automatically become political agents. They have to be organized, mobilized, and held together over time. Thank you for listening. It was me, Trey Mack, and Franny. Have a good day.